Hello Wargamers and welcome to Let's Get Critical. My name is Gar. In this video I'll be showing you how we painted the brand new Goremongers kill team. It was released in the Blood and Zeal box set. If you'd like to see how we achieve this look for our Goremongers, then please sit back, relax and let's get painting. The first colour that I used was a Citadel colour base paint and it's called Mechanicus Standard Grey. The first brush I'll be using is a cheap brush I got from the hobby store and it's got big long bristles and it's great for priming. Now I don't know if any of you have seen my other videos before, but I'll just quickly run through the process for priming. As you can see, you get some paint onto the bristles and you wipe the excess off on the palette and then you just start covering the model, and there are a couple of things you need to do. The first is to keep the paint moving all the time and use those long bristles to ram it into all the recesses and to just keep going round and round in motions. It generally takes about 2 to 3 minutes to prime a model, and you just don't want the paint to set. You want to just keep going round and round and covering all the areas with those long bristles with a thin layer of the paint. The second thing you want to do is to use 2 thin coats of paint. Don't try and do it all on the first coat. Give it a good coverage, let it go bone dry, and then apply a second coat of paint. And then once it's been primed twice, you can then move on to adding some colour, and the first colour will be coming up next. The first colour I chose to use on the model was the Citadel base colour, and it's called Dryad Bark. And for the brush I decided to use the Army Painter character brush. It's got a nice long bristle and it has a great tip for doing bits of detail. On the box art for these Goremongers, the trousers and the leathers are black. I decided to paint the trousers brown, and I decided on the Dryad Bark. Every time I paint a new kill team, I like to buy myself a new colour from the Citadel range, and this is a brand new colour I've never used before. So using the tip of the brush, I just started to pick out the details for the trousers. Once the section had been done, I moved on to the next section and started doing that, and then by the time I'd got round and done them all, I could then go back to the beginning section and do it again, so it's all had a second coat. And then when the model was dry, I then moved on to the next colour. The next colour was another new paint I bought, and it's called Bloodreaver Flesh, and this is a colour I chose to paint the skin using the same character brush as I did before. When I was painting the skin, I essentially, did the same thing as with the Dryad Bark and the trousers. I just used a tiny bit of paint on the end of the brush, and then very, very slowly, I just picked a section and started filling it in with some colour. Once it was finished, I then moved on to the next section and did the same again, slowly building up that paint colour, starting to look fantastic, and then on to the next section. And then once those sections were dry, I then just went back round to the beginning, did it all again, giving it 2 coats of paint, and was just very, very careful. After the Bloodreaver Flesh was dry, this is what it looks like. I think it's starting to really come together, and it's on to the next colour. The next colour I chose is another colour I bought specifically for this project called Mournfang Brown, and the brush I carried on using the character brush like I did in the other clips as well. I'm using this Mournfang Brown colour for the straps on the chest, there's all the straps on the head as well, and there's some straps on the leg. So very gently, like before, I just went round with the tip of the brush, picking them out and giving them a coat of paint. I moved on from section to section, and then once it was dry, I just went back round, did it again to give them 2 coats of paint, and that was it. You have to just be very careful and slowly building up the colour. After the straps were complete, I moved on to the next colour. The colour I chose was Steel Legion Drab by Citadel, and again using the character brush I decided just to paint the holsters on these just for a bit of variation, so I quickly just went over them with the brush. I gave them a couple of coats of paint, and then this is what they look like when they're dry, and it was on to the next colour. colour I used is a Citadel base colour called Khorne Red. It's another new colour that I bought for this project. I don't know if you know anything about the World Eaters and their lore and all the blood for the Blood God, but I decided to go with Khorne Red. It's a rich dark colour, and I can, as you can see, I'm painting the straps that are hanging off his belt. Very much the same as before with the same brush. I gave everything a coat of paint and then went back round when it was dry and gave it 2 coats of paint, and now this is what the model looks like. This is the end for most of the colours. Nearly everything I do now is adding more metallics, but I think it's starting to look really good right now. The next paint I chose to use is one of my favourites of all time. It's a colour, it's a metallic colour, it's called Leadbelcher. It's really fantastic metallic colour. I loaded some onto the wet palette, and just to make sure when you're using this that it's got a really thin, you know, and milky consistency, and then I just started very gently layering it over the plastic and giving it its first layer of that metallic colour. It's a fantastic colour, I use it all the time. After the weapon system was dry, I moved on to the head, and I decided to give this a Leadbelcher as well, using the same process with a very thin coat of paint, and then once it had dried I just went over it again and moved on to the next section. I painted this buckle on his belt, and I painted the grenades which were on the belt as well. I then moved round the back to the gore tanks and started to work on those. Once the gore tanks were dry, they got 2 coats as well. I then moved on to the trickiest part, which was doing the legs. With the legs, all I can say on this model and these Goremongers is to be very careful not to get paint, and you've got to get some horrible angles. But again, I just stuck with it, and I just used the tip of the brush with a tiny piece of the paint, and then that was it. After these legs were done, the model was more or less complete, and this is what it looks like now. I think it's starting to really come together and look absolutely brilliant, and I decided next it's time to move on to the base. The next colour I'll be using is another Citadel colour. It's called Zandri Dust, and this is a very common colour for painting skulls. I don't know if you noticed at the beginning, but there are some skulls on this model, but all of these skulls on the base I added myself. I've got the Citadel skull kit, the rocks and the skulls on the bottom were added. The skulls on his gore tanks were already there, and I don't know if you know about Warhammer models, but they love to add skulls to everything, so I went overboard, and hopefully when they're painted, hopefully they'll look brilliant. Once I'd given them a coat of paint like everything else, I then went over them a second time. I did the skulls on the base and the ones on the gore tank, and then I moved on to the final colour. The final colour is a Citadel metallic colour. It's called Balthasar Gold. What I decided to do was just to pick out some of the sections, because they'd already had a Leadbelcher in one of the previous chapters. I just gently flicked over them with 1 layer of the Balthasar Gold. I did this buckle on his belt, and then I decided to move on to this helmet. This helmet's such a big centerpiece. I thought Leadbelcher, although it's a great colour, they'd look so much better, you know, if it was done in gold. And then finally, I just picked out a couple of details on the weapon system. There's these spikes at the top of this glorious chainsword, and there's a spike round here at the back. And after that, you know, the colours were finished. This is the model now. This is it completely finished, and next we'll be moving on to the shade. For the final shade, I'll be using one of my favourite paints in the Citadel range, and it's called Nuln Oil. I'll also be using one of their brushes. It's the medium shade brush, and it's fantastic for this sort of work. Now, I don't know if you've watched any of my other videos, but I like to go through how to shade. Shading is one of my most favourite parts of painting. It adds a level of depth and a level of realism to the model that makes it look absolutely brilliant, and it mutes together all of those colours, and it hides all those tiny imperfections, and it just makes the models look superb. Now, the one thing I will say when you're shading is you want to give the model a very good liberal coating of the model, and then you want to wipe off the shade from the brush, and then you want to use the brush not to apply shade but to just spread it around and to remove all the puddles and the pools, so you're just left with a very, very thin, a very, very even coat of the Nuln Oil. And here it is, guys. Here's the finished Blood Herald model. Now, I've had such a fantastic time painting this model, and it's taken me about 4 hours. I've loved every minute of it. And what I'm going to do now is leave you with an outro clip. It will show you the rest of the Goremongers kill team. My name is Gar. Thank you for watching Let's Get Critical. Have a great day. Bye bye.